On these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You go to emailrevealer.com, you get a copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator. You can also go to oppermanreport.com, and that's where we have our special members section, where you can go there. There's exclusive content that is only available to members. Let's see. We just did a show recently there on about a catfishing murder case that went on in West Tennessee, I think it was. It might have been East Tennessee. But it's a really fascinating story. We just put it up on there this week. Okay, got a couple announcements I want to make before we get to our guest, David Shurter, who is a satanic ritual abuse survivor. David's, most of you might be familiar with him. Has been on the show quite a few times. Let's see here. There's a little drama going on behind the scenes. You might remember a few weeks back, William Ramsey had to fill in for me. And that was so that I could be a delegate down at the Democratic Convention here in Nevada. Turned out that day I could not make it down there. Okay, I had a dead battery, couldn't get over there. But it turned out to be the best thing. A couple of the delegates were going to give me a ride, and we were talking on the phone, and they were telling me about some drama that was going on behind the scenes, where the Hillary campaign, the Hillary people in charge of the Democratic Party here, were ousting committee members and committee captains, the people in charge of the credentialing committee. As a matter of fact, one of the women they ousted was in charge of the credentialing 4 years ago. Now, what happened was, I said, well, maybe I should stay here, and if things get really crazy, because they were trying to arrest them the night before. And I said, okay, maybe I should stay here, and I can report on the air. If they're about to arrest you, you call me up, we'll put it right on the air right away. So it was like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's exactly what happened. They tried to arrest these 4 or 5 women. And a couple of Hillary people actually sat down with the Bernie people to get arrested in solidarity with them, because everybody saw how crooked everything was being run. Now, we reported that show, and it had a huge response. It's amazing how many people locally here had heard that show. People at the bank, people at the supermarket, people I saw at the gas station came up to me and said, hey, what's going on with those 4 ladies? What happened? What happened? So it made a really big splash. Ever since then, I've been trying to get credentialed to cover the state convention, which is today, down at the Paris Hotel on the Las Vegas Strip. And they've been giving me the runaround. They've been ignoring me. They've been shuffling me around. And they have not produced my credentials. I could not go down there today and cover this for you. Now, it's not that, maybe you think, well, okay, you just got some internet radio show, right? They don't recognize you. But they know me. They know who I am. Okay, 2 years ago, 2014, I hosted and moderated the sheriff's debate here, and I hosted and moderated the governor's debate. I'm well known to these people here. Okay, they've seen me on TV. I wrote a monthly column, Level magazine. It's not like I'm not known, that I'm a legitimate journalist and broadcaster, okay? I've had on my show, I've had Erin Bilbray, the Nevada superdelegate, that's been on the show. We had Bob Beers, local city councilman, on the show. So we've had with the judges election, we had some judges on here. Paul Godet was on the show, and also Mary Perry, who's running for state assembly right now. We've had local politics on this show. There's no reason why they would not give me credentials, except that they know I'm the only one who would report to you what I'm about to report to you right now today. And that is that the Democratic Convention of Nevada is stealing this election from Bernie Sanders this morning. And here's what they did. The plan was, because what happened was at the last one that I missed, they had a vote of delegates. And even though it was reported on the news initially, way back when the election was here, that Hillary won, when they counted up the delegates at the last convention, We had the majority of delegates. The Bernie Sanders people had the majority of delegates. We won this state. Okay? Now, what happened was today, the plan was the Bernie people were going to go down and they were going to have these crooked people who are running the convention removed. Okay? Removed from the committee, the steering committee, and all that kind of stuff. They got wind of this. Allegedly, there's some busloads that came in from California. We know that Barbara Boxer from California is here at our convention speaking to our delegates. Okay, she's from the California senator, is here in Nevada. Okay, insulting the Bernie supporters, by the way. And telling them that they need to give up and go home. Okay, so what happened was the plan was to have this vote to remove the sitting board committee directors. While there were still people online to get in, someone went up to the front, announced the motion, and it was denied because all the Bernie people weren't in the audience yet. But the Hillary people were in on this. They knew that there was going to be this little secret vote beforehand. So that never went through. Then they had another vote to throw out the vote from back a few months ago, the one where Bernie picked up all it. So now we're starting from scratch again. There's all other kinds of shenanigans going on over there too right now today. It's not, the day's not over. The latest vote is that Hillary's ahead by 30 delegates. It's like 1,690 to 1,660. But there's been so many Bernie delegates that have been denied their credentials after driving all the way down from Carson City and Eli and all these all outlying parts of the state to get here for this. Now they get here, and suddenly they're being told that they're not credentialed. This is totally getting stolen. It's not over yet. Whenever they have a voice vote, the Bernie people are shouting down the Hillary people 10-1. But from the stage, they're not hearing the Bernie people. So it's not over yet. There's also some other shenanigans going on where they're telling people it's okay to leave the room, and the Hillary people are getting signals not to leave the room. They're having other votes after the Bernie people leave. They're sending people to different rooms, and they don't let them in the room. One of the callers I got today from Ashley Cardillo, she was pushed and knocked down to the ground trying to get into one of these rooms. And the person who pushed her and knocked her down was a guy who's done this before. So there's a lot of stuff going on down there. What I'm hearing reported to me directly from the convention floor is that the tension is really, really high. Okay, there's also, again, threats of arrest. And I've told them that if anything comes up during the next 2 hours, they can call me up and we'll put them right on the air. I hate to tell that to David, sitting by patiently. But anyway, so let's get back to a couple other things real quick coming up. Next week, we have Dr. Cynthia McKinney, the former congresswoman and presidential candidate. She's coming on next week. Oh, last night I had a really great show with Peter Dale Scott. Okay, and he hooked him up with a guy named Brad Schreiber. Schreiber wrote this book about the SLA and Patty Hearst. And Peter Dale Scott wrote a blurb in the book. So he hooked me up with this guy, Peter Schreiber. And we're going to be having him on, I believe, next week. No, the week after. After Cynthia McKinney. He comes on the week after that. Okay. Oh, also, too, I got Conchita Sharon, okay? And she's writing a book about Jeffrey Epstein, and it's called Traffic King. Now, she's got some inside information about this case because she's the director of a human rights trafficking advocacy group in Washington, D.C., so she has a lot of access to behind-the-scenes stuff. Let's see, what else? Nothing else in my notes. So we got today, great show for you. We got David Shurter. He's the author of the book Rabbit Hole, a Satanic Ritual Survivors Abuse. David, what's the name of your book?
Rabbit Hole, a Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor.
Rabbit Hole, a Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor's Story. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Okay, so
if they do call it, don't feel bad at all. I you know, the whole thing about it is that America, it was built on anything. It was built on participation of its citizens, and this whole thing has been such a fiasco that that so many things have been stolen. I mean, if the election has shown anything this year, is that it's all rigged. It's all kind of a joke. So
I hear you, man. Yeah, and I knew you were a Bernie supporter too, you know, and that's why I took the liberty of doing a little report there on your time. Dave, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself? Who is David Shurter?
130,000 people. Who gets that? 130,000 people. They were turning people away at one of his rallies.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, about me. Excuse me. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. I was born into a family that was Luciferian, and I was also an MK Ultra survivor. I have a book, Rabbit Hole. I also have a blog, davidshurter.com, where I talk about my family's involvement in this cult. My dad was a child trafficker and a child abductor, and was, I believe, in some pretty high profile cases. I started off, I wrote Rabbit Hole years ago, or I actually wrote it as under Confessions of an Antichrist, because in the Luciferian cult, I was raised to believe that I was the Antichrist. And so it was pretty screwed up. I have videos out there on YouTube where I talk about the Franklin situation, which is a credit union that failed in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was it's basically been a mess. And now I'm an advocate. I'm trying to expose this elite pedophile thing that's going on. Jeffrey Epstein is a perfect example of what I deal with. It's one of the topics that I focus on. And there's a thing that I have just gotten involved with, because a lot of the child trafficking that I'm dealing with, one of the biggest issues is that it's heavily connected to our CPS, our Child Protective Services. And
you know what, David, before you get too far, can you talk a little bit closer to the mic, a little bit louder, because you're kind of low?
Yeah, I'll take you off. I had you on speaker, sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
And so I'm dealing with the case now with this whole CPS child trafficking, because they are coming in and targeting children online and then sending CPS in to take the children. And there's a case right now in Michigan called the O'Donnell case. It's two 15-year-old twins, Alexis and Abby O'Donnell. They it all started with them going onto Instagram one time and saying how they tried marijuana for the first time. 15-year-old girls, kind of be expected, you know, they're teenagers. And CPS showed up at their door within an hour. Took the girls, put them in a foster home. They went to court. The girls, sorry for the noise, I'll be done in just a second. Went to the girls and put them in a foster home. They started getting abused in the foster home. And so they got abused in the foster home. They escaped the foster home, went to the police, asked the police to help them. The police, in turn, put the girls in a juvenile detention center, strapped them up, pumped them full of drugs. An advocacy group got involved and got one of the girls out, but her twin is still in there and having issues. And so it's a big case, and I've been working on it pretty extensively.
Well, give me an idea now. Where's that going
on? Michigan. So there's a petition on there on change.org for Rick Schneider, who is the governor there.
Yeah, good luck with that.
You know that I wrote Rick Schneider a letter about it, and basically told him what you're doing is horrible, and people are going to see these girls, because these two 15-year-old girls are gorgeous. And because CPS showed up at their house and this whole case, it's just a really fishy deal. Because these girls have had to suffer, and now the mother and the twin that are trying to get the other twin out have a gag order. They can't say anything. And so this is a case where the government, I believe the girls were being targeted and someone was already watching them, which is the reason why CPS showed up. I think it was, they posted this on Instagram and CPS was banging on their door 45 minutes later.
Well, let me ask a couple of questions.
And so that's
in this case, are the parents still married or are they divorced?
It's a mom. There's no dad. I don't know about the father, but it's just the mother and her two girls.
Was there any kind of custody litigation going on?
No.
Okay,
no.
And so the kids were typing on Instagram and suddenly CPS shows up. Now,
right.
What is the mother doing right now to get these kids out of foster?
They've gone to court. She was trying to become outspoken. The twin, the 15-year-old twin, went out and did YouTube videos trying to gain attention to help her twin get out.
Yeah.
In fact, she went in to visit her twin, and she has a picture of her twin who is strapped to a gurney. She's heavily drugged. And the girl, they say that she's not eating. She's on a hunger strike. Her sister says they're not feeding her. But she's totally, she's very thin. And these girls are just, the thing about it is when you see these girls and how cute they are, it's not that hard to think that someone was already targeting them before this all happened. And there are cases all over where they're now instructing people, and it's probably a good thing to say on your show. They are instructing people. If someone shows up and says they're from CPS and they're there to take your kids, if they don't have a warrant and they don't have at least 2 CPS and they don't have the police, do not open the door and do not relinquish your kids, because it's all being done illegally. And some of these people, they're saying, aren't even connected to CPS. They're just going into people's houses and targeting their kids. And so that's a little bit of a separate issue from the O'Donnell case, but there's a lot of problems with our CPS. And
David, let me tell you a couple of things. First of all, in Florida, the CPS system down in Florida, they admit that they've lost track of like 1,000 kids or 1,500 kids, some insane number of kids that went into the system that now they have no record of. They don't know where they went.
Yeah.
In the state of Florida.
I think they said nationwide that number is well over 10,000.
Yeah, and I have another case that we've been reporting on this show. We call it a child abduction story, okay, because I don't want to use the family's name. But this is a 13-year-old girl. She was allured away. No, she's the same age as my daughter, so she's 15 now. It happened when she was 14. Same age as my daughter. She got lured away from the home when she was 14 years old by a guy, a 35-year-old convicted sex offender who was at a parole violation. Takes across. They're showing pictures on the news. Hey, look, they're in this Walmart. They're going from Tennessee, Kentucky, all these different states, right? They finally find them. They supposedly rescue this girl, okay? And they arrest her for stealing the stepfather's truck when she was abducted. The kid's been in foster care and under the court control. This victim for stealing the stepfather's truck.
Yeah. That's the thing about it is that they are more apt to arrest the victim or the whistleblower than they are the perpetrator. And I tell people all the time, in this world right now that we live in, being a pedophile is being promoted because you will spend less time, way less time, raping a child or 10 than you will being caught for what, $60 worth of pot in a lot of states. You'll spend way more time for the pot than you will raping the kids.
The average sentence in the U.S. for raping a kid it's an 8-year sentence, and they usually serve 3.5 years. That's the average nationwide.
Well, look at what we're dealing with Dennis Hassard.
Yeah.
Hassard, they're not even prosecuting him for raping kids. They're prosecuting him for keeping it secret illegally. You know, it's insane. And you have Time magazine. They just rated Cardinal Pell, third in charge of the Vatican, Coward of the Year. And so...
Wait, what's that story? I'm not familiar with that.
Cardinal Pell was heavily involved in child homes in Australia. And like it is in the United States, there was a lot of abuse. And so Australia's Royal Commission is doing a inquiry about it. And Cardinal Pell wouldn't fly back to Australia over health reasons, saying that he has heart problems, even though he just got busted being out in public, eating a steak and French fries and drinking beer. And so he said he had heart problems. He couldn't fly back, so he did it all on Skype or however they did it. And in his 3-day testimony, I'm paraphrasing this. Well, one of the quotes was, I can't remember if I remembered. That was one of his direct quotes. But basically, Cardinal Pell came forward and said, yes, I realize that a lot of children got raped, and it's quite a travesty. But what did it really mean to me? It didn't really mean anything to me, and I didn't get involved. And that was acceptable, and the Pope is actually defending him, saying, no, that's okay. Even though he was completely in charge at the time and has his own abuse issues that he's being investigated for. And so when you turn around, this whole organized pedophilia thing and this whole focus on pedophilia, when people say it's a conspiracy theory, you only need to look around at the cases. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein, the two people that are named the most on his Lolita Express, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Why is Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton running for office when they're obviously connected to some pedophile ring? And we have them running for president. And
you know, it just came out. It came out just over the weekend. It was just Friday. It was reported that Bill Clinton has been on that plane twice as many times as previously reported. It was previously reported he was on there 11 times. Now they got him on there, I believe it's either 23 or 26 times. Okay, but it's either 23 or 26, I can guarantee you that. And it's double what was previously known. And they're saying now that on 5 of those occasions that he's been on this plane, he ditched his Secret Service detail. He had to sign off a form saying that he wanted to go there without Secret Service protection. Also, too, you know, it's a fact that there is a bed on that plane, you know? And on one of the flight logs with Bill Clinton, there's a softcore porn star, and there's also another notation of a girl named Tatiana, you know, with nothing, no last name, no nothing, just a teen kid's name, you know?
Yeah. And they're getting away with it, and there's no penalty. And you know, it's amazing. There's no penalty for any of this. And Jeffrey Epstein, his so-called jail sentence that he came and went at his leisure, it was nothing, and now he's right back in business. And that's, it didn't even stop him. And it didn't even, you would think that being a convicted pedophile would bother your reputation and people would look down upon you. But everyone's supporting Epstein because he's rich. And like Trump said, he throws fabulous parties. And there's lots of young girls there.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because Trump has been quoted. He said years ago that he knew Epstein for 15 years before all this came out. That they were great friends, and like you said, had great parties, all that kind of stuff. And now we have over the weekend, all this stuff comes out about Trump's past, that he's making these phone calls to the tabloids using a fake name. And there's even been a report today, I believe it was the New York Times, that report about how Trump treats women in his organization and Miss Americas and stuff like that. But here you have this thing where it just came out in a deposition, too, the most recent depositions, that Trump did fly on Epstein's plane. There's no reason for Trump to be flying on anybody else's plane because he has his own plane. So that just came out. He's definitely been on that plane as well. So he can't claim that he didn't know Epstein. They weren't good friends because he's flying on the guy's plane. Okay, but there's not one word about that. They're coming out a little bit about Clinton and some of his former. They don't even call them rapes. They call them affairs and stuff, or his former indiscretions. They call it. They don't even describe it as these rapes, like Kathleen Willey and what he did to Paula Jones, which was blatant flashing, and sexual harassment of a state employee. So, yeah, it's disgusting.
It's. The thing about it is that what I was involved with in Omaha, Nebraska, as a kid with this whole Franklin credit union scandal and all that. Excuse me. That was where we were first alerted, because it was the first case, being in 86, 87, that came out that alerted the public that there was a problem with a large organized pedophile ring that was at the time primarily focusing on boys. And Omaha was not alone, because a Dr. Tom Philpott was reporting the same thing was happening in Houston, Texas. Almost the exact same activities that were going on in Omaha at the exact same time. There's a documentary out there that you can see on YouTube called Boys for Sale. And he goes on and talks about the problems, and they showed how easy it was to call and get a boy over the phone. And he was supposedly committed suicide. But they're saying, you can shoot yourself in the head twice and then call it a suicide. I'm not quite sure how a suicide victim shoots themselves in the head twice, but I guess that's just me. They're so blatant about it anymore. And so what we saw back then has just exemplified. And now we're, 35 years later, and it's being blatantly thrown in our face. And to say that it doesn't exist and that there's no problem, when you look at the court sentences that are consistently being given out concerning crimes, sex crimes against children, obviously there's something going on, because the penalty for raping a child is becoming ridiculously low, and to the point where they're trying to normalize pedophilia, and that sounds crazy, but they are trying to normalize pedophilia, so much so that the DSM typed pedophilia as a sexual orientation. They say that it was a typo, but the book is huge, and your only typo was to type sexual orientation under pedophilia, and so I'm not buying it.
Let me ask a question, David. We're getting a question from the chat room about Larry King from the Franklin Credit Union from the Franklin case. Now,
Yeah.
and today, I know today he's working at a Mercedes dealership, but do you know what state he's in?
He's right outside of Washington. He's out in that area. And so, but I've heard that he was at a car place, but then I was watching some conversations, and I'm not so sure he's there anymore because he's kind of like a zoo animal now. People find out where he works and they go stare at him and go to his work.
I can believe
And
that.
so, but and from what I understand, he's back involved with 2 more charities, children's.
That's
charities.
right. That's right. I heard that too as well. Yeah, that he was back working for another foundation. Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's where it's the thing about it is that it's gone. It was always involved in our homes for kids. This sex trafficking has always been involved. Perfect example, Second Mile High with Jerry Sandusky. When the thing started breaking about Jerry Sandusky, we heard all about Second Mile High and how there was an elite pedophile group going on, and that Jerry was selling kids to elite people. And then he went to jail, and all of that got dropped. And it's because that's where it's infiltrated at now. I mean, what was going on in Omaha at the time they got busted in '87, but was going on crazy for a long time before. That was a multi-billion-dollar business because the child sex trafficking trade was also coupled at the time with the cocaine they were flying in from the Contras to Offutt Air Force Base. And so this is a multi-billion-dollar business. Do you really think these people just packed it up and went away? It just shifted and went into a place. And now we're finding that it's in the institutions that are supposed to be protecting our children, including our CPS. And that's the reason why this O'Donnell case is so important. I have information on my blog about the O'Donnell case. There's a website out there, Free the O'Donnell Girls from CPS, I believe is the title of it. But they can't be involved in it because they have a gag order. So basically, the O'Donnell case shows that the state can target and come for your children. They can put them in foster care. They can let them get abused in foster care. Then when they come and they report it, they can put them in a juvenile detention facility. And at the same time they're doing all of this, they can put a gag order on you. So that if you talk to anybody, they can throw you in jail. And obviously the O'Donnell case can't be the only one like this. So how many other people are going through these human rights violations and getting gag orders on them so that they're threatening to put them in jail forever if they speak about it?
David, are you kidding me? This goes on every single day in family court, man.
Exactly.
Every day. And I don't know a city or a county anywhere in this country where this isn't going on. Here in Vegas, they had a deal going on where the kids in juvenile detention, they would get in a little trouble, and they would get sent to the juvenile system. They would be sent to therapists. And the therapists were the ones who decided when the therapists are getting paid big money too. It's not nickels and dimes. They're making a lot of money from this. And the therapists are the ones who decide when the therapy has to end. And these kids were in perpetual therapy until they became adults. And the parents, even kids from good homes, and the parents can't do a damn thing about it. I'll talk to you off the air though. There is some good news taking place over here, possibly. To clear up some of this stuff that's going on here in Clark County. Thank God for that the word's getting out. A couple of things you mentioned Penn State, Sandusky. I don't know if you heard the show. I did a show with a guy who wrote a book about Jimmy Superfly Snuka, the wrestler, who is accused of murdering his ex-wife, In fact, he just got charged with it. And so the guy who was a sports writer, wrote a lot of sports stuff, a lot of wrestling stuff, and he starts telling me about a book he wrote about Penn State, and not about little boys getting raped over there, But little girls on the swim team were also getting molested over there. It was systematic in the high school coaches, feeding them into the college coaches, going on from the age of 12 years old. They were being fed into this system, being molested over there as well. None of that made the news.
It did. There was a little blip.
Oh, you saw that? Okay.
A long time ago, for a while, there was a little blip in our media that they were talking about how swim teams, women's swim teams across America, were rife with pedophilia.
Yeah.
It's not just swim teams. It's all of the sports, because they were talking about gymnastics too. The gymnastics instructors were molesting their kids. And what ends up happening is it happens, and then what we see are these institutions like Penn State spending a lot of money fighting the whistleblowers. And so, I mean, usually these people are just, you're just students. You don't have any money. Your parents don't have any money. You're generally on loans or grants or whatever. And these institutions have hundreds of millions of dollars. They can just pump however much money they need to fight you. And that's what's happening. I mean, America has no legal system now. Yeah. If you're rich, you can buy whatever justice you want. And it's amazing. And we're seeing this whole molestation of our kids and this whole sexualization. I mean, I don't understand why we need to teach kindergartners about masturbation. And I certainly don't understand why we're teaching fourth graders about anal sex. What do these children need to know about sex? And what they're saying, that the whole push about normalizing pedophilia is saying that our children are waking up sexually faster now. So it should be okay. But the reason why they're waking up faster now sexually is because we're inundating them with sex from the minute they're born. And feeding them this constant, when my nieces and nephews were going to high school, and they're all in their 30s now, but when they were going to high school, what they told me was the big thing in high school was that these kids were out having orgies. And it wasn't, you don't have to be concerned about homosexual or heterosexual. Everything was going on. What the problem that we're having is that the people that are in charge, people are saying, oh, they're homosexual. What these people are polysexual. I mean, from what I know growing up, these elite people that are involved with this would back up into a doorknob if there was nothing else. It's not that they screw children. It's not that they screw animals. It's that they screw everything. They are obsessed with sex.
David,
and children.
When you say that, okay,
number one,
that this is becoming systematic, to sexualize our children, right? It's not by accident. And when my daughter was little, like a toddler, 6, 7, before you're a tween, before you're 12, they have a store. They have a teen store called The Limited. But for when you're under 12 years old, it's called The Limited 2, right? And it's just clothing for little girls 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, right? And it's all very provocative clothing that's definitely not appropriate for a kid of that age. And do you know who owns that chain of stores? Leslie Wexler, who is best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, he gave Epstein the home he lives in Manhattan, and he's the only client, the only public client that Jeffrey Epstein has over his money managing. The only one.
Yeah.
And another thing too, you know who Epstein was friends with too, who flew on that plane, and one of his buddies is the guy who did the movie Capturing the Friedmans, who tried to make excuses for the Friedmans molesting those little kids.
And they say that it doesn't exist, and yet we have example after example after example that it obviously does. And I don't know. I remember a few years back, it was a very disconcerting time when the big thing for 8 and 9-year-old girls to wear were pants that basically didn't cover their butt cheeks. It said juicy on the ass.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I don't have kids, because getting kids normal clothes, you know, but then you have, what was the line where, I mean, they'd sell clothes, they would send out a magazine, and then everyone would be naked. You know, you're selling clothes, but everyone's naked. Abercrombie and Finch. And
well, yeah, that's another Leslie Wexler store. Okay.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, so there's a definite sexualization of kids, and we're watching it. It's everywhere. It's very pervasive, but it's, you know, the interesting thing, and this is just a short little history lesson. They have equated the number one invention that changed humanity and society was the Gutenberg press. Before the Gutenberg press, we saw a high incidence of pedophilia, a high incidence of very sexualized behavior, and it was very common especially in the lower classes, but as well as in the higher classes, to be having full of inappropriate behavior. The Gutenberg press gave us the school system, gave us education, it basically defined humanity. And what I've told people is that television completely erased what the Gutenberg press has done for humanity and turned us into mindless idiots who, people say, oh, brainwashing doesn't work. If you sit down for 6 hours of television, you have just, at that 6 hours, brainwashed yourself. That is the reason why when you're going out, you're buying the things that you do. If mind control and brainwashing through advertising didn't work, they wouldn't be spending these millions upon millions of dollars to have a 15-second commercial at the Super Bowl. It obviously works. And the brainwashing that we're going through, and parents just don't know what to do. I mean, I understand kids need to know about sex, but the age has to be appropriate. And they're not getting the answers. And the issues that we're seeing is that HIV, infection rates in HIV in children 12 years old to, I believe the age goes to 24, those numbers of HIV infection have far exceeded the numbers that were prevalent in gay men in the 80s when it first was discovered and came out. It's killing our children in exponential rates. And there probably is a variety of reasons for that. But we need to start waking up and realizing that our children here are in serious danger. And not just for them with themselves, but with our officials. And when you have school systems that are focused, I mean, I'm sorry, a fourth grader is what? 10 years old. What do they need to know about anal sex for? You know, I remember back in fourth grade, I was learning cursive writing and geometry and history and math, and my big thing was looking forward to going out and playing in the schoolyard for,
Yeah, but recess. David, you're so old now. You don't remember the fourth grade. That was a long time ago for you.
Yeah, very long time.
How old are you, man?
I'm going to be 50 this year.
Oh, you really?
The end of this year.
Get out of here.
50.
Okay, you look great, man. Okay, you look really good. I'm 53. Okay, I thought I was like 10 years older than you. I thought I was 15 years older than you. David, now people are confused about who you are And then they're asking me, have you ever tried whistleblowing and stuff like that? So people aren't clear who David Shurter is, the author of Rabbit Hole, a Satanic Ritual Abuse Survivor Story. So you're the author of this book, and you've been a huge advocate. Why don't you explain to people about the thing going on in Seattle coming up?
There's a great conference on trauma and dissociation in Seattle in October. It runs the 7th through the 9th. It's, I believe, the first weekend in October. It'll be at the Radisson. I've been involved with whistleblowing and trying to get this all investigated for 15, 16 years now. My dad died in 2006, and I started to get involved with it to investigate it and expose it that. I had spent a lot of my time. Well, there was a man who was involved with Franklin called Alan Baer, and basically it wasn't safe for me to do anything until that man was dead, because he was the gatekeeper. He was the one who was killing people, who was involved with all of this. And so I became a whistleblower and actually got involved. I wrote a book, did a blog. I have YouTube videos. That's how it really started. For me, was that I started to do YouTube videos about my parents making me kill a man, light him on fire when I was 10. And then I started to go into Omaha and explain Franklin. And so I've gone to the police, gotten absolutely nowhere, went all over Omaha to try and get people to help. Nobody would help. Senator Ernie Chambers, in our first conversation that I had with them, who was involved in the whole investigation in Franklin, told me when he found out who I was and what I was doing, to drop what I was doing immediately. And when I asked him why, he said, because they're going to come arrest you, put you in a mental institution, pump you full of drugs, throw you off the roof, and call it a suicide. And so one of the main investigators, who was supposed to be a good guy in this, told me to drop it. And I was trying to push the envelope, trying to get it out in Omaha, and basically got run out of Omaha. I was getting death threats. They destroyed my car. They were leaving dead animals in my yard. They were just, the harassment was amazing. And so I left, came out to the Pacific Northwest. But now, like I said, I'm working on this conference. I believe the way it's working, Ed, you will probably be speaking.
Aha, great.
People like Colin Ross. It's really, the conference itself is trauma-based health, and how to understand trauma and how to overcome it by the understanding of it. See, what it does to a person, how it affects you as a child, how it affects you as an adult, and then gives you methods on ways to deal with it. So the conference is not just for abuse survivors that went through, ritual abuse or the stuff that I did. It goes all the way to, if you are a veteran and you are suffering PTSD, this conference is for you, because it's going to explain how the trauma affected you and how to deal with it. And it's still tentative, but it's looking that on the 6th, which is the Thursday before, I'm actually doing a conference with yourself, Ed, and Fiona Barnett. And Fiona Barnett is the survivor whistleblower in Australia who came forward, pressed charges against Anthony Kidman, who was Nicole Kidman's dad. He was one of her primary abusers and was one of her MK Ultra handlers. Charges, then inquiry was made, charges got pressed. That's the reason why Anthony Kidman killed himself about 2 months later. And she was the one who's really been pushing this whole envelope in Australia. And so the conference that we're doing on the 6th, which will be at the same exact hotel. So anybody who comes to that conference, I highly suggest. And the conference, it's the Seattle Trauma and Dissociation Conference. Information can be found at igdid.org. And it's the rousters there, the people who are speaking are amazing. And but the conference that is going on the 6th that I'm trying to set up here, where Fiona's going to talk about Australia, I'm going to talk about my history in Franklin. And then I'm hoping, Ed, that I can get you to talk about all of the cases that are current, the Jeffrey Epstein case, talk about a little bit about Jerry Sandusky.
Oh, you know what? That's a great idea. I was wondering what I was going to talk about. That's a great idea, though. Yeah, I can talk about Epstein because I can brush up on that. Yeah.
And so it's because what they said in the 80s when they closed this all down, because you have to remember Franklin was preceded by having thousands of people across the nation come forward and saying that their children were being raped and abused in their daycares. And this happened all over the United States at the same time. And so what our nation did was they focused on one case, the McMartin case. And they set up the CIA-based group that was all accused pedophiles, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, to run around and drone the words false memory and satanic panic in our heads.
Yeah.
So that we ended up dismissing all of this mess. And the thing about it is that when you hear the word satanic panic, don't think about Satanists. Don't think about anything like that. It's basically satanic panic is a time that's synonymous where we were first alerted that our children were being raped and abused in mass. And now, 35 years later, we're right back where we were. The claims are all coming up all over again. Only this time we have history behind us. They can't say that it's a conspiracy and it doesn't exist because now we have 35 years of history to look back at. And what it's shown is there was a cover-up then. There's been a cover-up all along. There's still a cover-up. And the problem didn't go away. It's gotten worse in degrees that most people can't even imagine. And so nobody's children are safe. You know?
Well, let me ask you a question. Back to your case, okay? Because I know there's like a little update in your case.
Yeah.
Now, the first time you were talking to me about this case, there was a situation where there was there was a dead body in the basement. Am I correct?
No, when I got involved with my father ended up telling me that he had skeletons in his closet. And I told him, I tried to placate him, you know. I thought he was talking figuratively. You know, we all have skeletons in our closet. And my father got very incensed. He was very sick at the time. Tried to stand up and said, "You don't understand. I have skeletons in my closet." Well, very soon afterwards, I was talking to my sister Kathy, who lives in town. She had gone out to visit our father 2 weeks before I did. And he had the exact same conversation with her in the exact same manner. And so I started to talk to Kathy and told her, you know, if he's saying that he has skeletons in his closet, if he means that literally, because he had completely torn out and rebuilt this huge closet in his master bedroom. And himself, he did it alone because my dad he was great. He could build anything. And so we came to the conclusion that he was talking literally, that he had killed children, and most likely what they are their body parts are in packages filled with lime, and he put them in the walls. And he was speaking literally that he had skeletons in his closet. And I've gone to the police with that, and they didn't do anything. Well, I have a documentary out now called David's Story, and you can find it on my YouTube channel. I believe it's David Shurter 1 on YouTube, but it's called David's Story. And that documentary came out, and someone had done a little bit of looking into it and gotten a hold of me. Come to find out, my stepmother sold the house in 2015. So I have sent a letter and tried to contact the owner, and I haven't heard anything back. But it's not like it's going to be a one-shot thing. I'm going to keep trying. But basically wrote them and told them, look, you have the remains of dead kids in your walls in your master bedroom, and you need to look into it. So I have the opportunity to get this looked at. And if I can have them look and see what I actually firmly believe is there for my father, I can get this whole thing blown apart, because it'll show that my dad was a child.
Yeah, get some cadaver-sniffing dogs. We're with David Shurter, satanic ritual abuse survivor. We'll be right back with more of this.
All clear.
Okay, man. Well, David, we're still on the air though. Okay. So you got to watch what you say. Anything else you want to bring up?
You know, we're doing really well. I apologize for being so long. I was sound asleep, and something woke me up. It was like 4 to 5. I was just like, oh my God, I got to call him right now.
What is wrong with you, man? That's a good idea, though, man, to talk about Epstein, okay? Because I have all that. I got all that ready to go. I could do a PowerPoint on that so quickly without even blinking an eye. And plus, I got this woman coming on, Conchita Sharon. You've heard of her?
I think you've talked about her, or you've said something online about her. Because I read everything you post. I mean, I get it.
Yeah. Hey.
I end up,
Did you hear the show the other night, last night, with Aphrodite Jones?
I didn't, not yet. I plan on going. I listened to your O'Brien Phillips thing that night, because I was sick that week, and I couldn't do anything. I wanted to just lay there with my eyes closed, but I wasn't tired. So I listened to your interview. Great interview. You are a very strong
of course
personality. I like that, because they were trying to dominate that, and people were laughing because they were just like, he is just not going to let him take over his interview. And I was just like, nope, I knew he wouldn't.
Wait, dude,
it was funny.
Aphrodite Jones is telling me that it's okay Michael Jackson dangled the baby out the window because his fans were so interested in seeing the baby. She's telling me, dude, you got to listen, okay? She's telling me that, you know what? He was like a kid too. He was and he was exploring his sexuality, just like those other little preteens were exploring, the little 13-year-olds.
You know, I think that is why Michael Jackson was able to do what he did.
Yeah.
Because Michael Jackson, because of what he went through and because he grew up in the limelight, everyone viewed him as a little boy lost. I mean, he could have lit someone on fire and they would have, oh, well, poor Michael Jackson, And the arguments that they have for each other, because Michael Jackson, I mean, what she says about Michael Jackson, you ask any of them about any of their abuse allegations, and the arguments are about as stupid, and I'm sorry, but dangling a baby off of the balcony, I just wonder what those kids think of their dad.
Nothing she says to me, right? Nothing she says. Wonder. She tells me, some of these kids, their only complaint is that they were tickled through their genes on their genitals, and then they needed therapy years later. And I says, well, I hate to tell you, but I'm 53 years old. If a grown man had tickled me through my pants when I was 13, I'd still be struck by that. I would still be traumatized by that. I know I would, And she was just laughing at me, man. Did I lose everybody? As soon as I mentioned genitals, we had a genitals discussion last week too. Okay, I think we might have lost I might have got bumped off of AFR.
Sorry, if I get a phone call.
Oh, okay.
I'm just gonna leave it because I hung up the phone call. I didn't want it to disconnect me from Skype, and I ended up disconnecting myself anyway. So
that's okay. I'm used to talking to myself. I do it all the time.
Yeah,
I walk around the house
too. My Bluetooth goes off, and I'll be rambling on for 5
All right, gentlemen, we're getting ready to come back.
Leave us off. We're having fun.
No rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Hey, by the way, I wanted to point out one thing that I forgot to before when I was talking about Peter Dale Scott and the show from last night and stuff, is that we got a lot of big opportunities coming up. We have in June, of course, Vic's going to be off from school. Vic is my daughter, and she's going to be off from school. So we're going to be going to California in June to cover some Bernie events, Bernie rallies, and press conferences and stuff like that, okay? Then we're going to try, because I got a filmmaker up in Northern California who's willing to work with me on spec to tape with Hank Harrison, who's the father of Courtney Love, and has some fascinating stuff to talk about. The last time he was on the show, in fact, he was on the show here on Saturday Night Live, he turns out he's friends with Kenneth Anger, and he's talking about how Kenneth Anger told him that the people at MTV were doing ritual sacrifices and all kind of stuff. So it turns out Hank Harrison was buddies with Kenneth Anger for a long time, okay? And I think we uncovered that for the first time anywhere. So we want to get him on film. He's getting up there in years. Want to get him on film. I think I can also, during that trip, get Peter Dale Scott on film. I talked to Peter Dale Scott last night, yesterday afternoon, whenever it was I interviewed him. I think it was yesterday afternoon. We spoke about a good 45 minutes after the show, after the taped interview, and we become buddies. I'm buddies with Ambassador Peter Dale Scott, you know, and he's liking my stuff on Facebook. We're chatting back and forth, and we hit it off. So because he wants to talk to me, he's going to write about my experience with Mark David Chapman. That's what it was. I think that's what perked his interest, and he's the one that hooked me up with this other guy, Shurter, I was talking about, who did the book about the SLA and Patty Hearst, Brad Schreiber. So the point I'm trying to get at, okay, is for this California trip, is GoFundMe/Opperman Report. We're getting some good donations for that, and we're close. I can get a still camera. We're getting close to that, and to fund this trip to California to cover the Bernie rally. Okay, if we had some video for that, great. I got a filmmaker who will do the Hank Harrison. We got a deal on that. But the only thing he can pitch it to Vice TV and stuff like that too. So that's going to be a real deal, a real film. And I think also too, if we can get this, get some films under our belt. Okay, if we can get some films under our belt, I think it'll help us again to book bigger guests, better guests. Not that David Shurter is not the greatest. Okay, we love him. Okay, trust me, we're going to be getting to some more stuff in a second that he's failed to mention. But that. And also, too, that these local Dem bums can't kick me around. Okay, I'm pissed off today. You have no idea how pissed off I am about this crap, man. And they're not letting me in there to cover this thing, which was a total sham. They're not even getting back to me. But back to our guest, David Shurter, Satanic ritual abuse survivor. He wrote the book Rabbit Hole. Now, David, a couple of things you don't mention is...
Wait a minute, Ed. I just want to say something with what you just said. People out there all the time are asking me, what can I do? What can I do? And I really don't have a whole lot to tell them. But the one thing that I can tell them is that when you have opportunities to support people like Ed and the Opperman Report, to get the information out there, that's doing something. And so making contributions to GoFundMe is because the thing about it is that it has been my estimation that the people who are actually really reporting the truth are kept in poverty. And so it's very difficult for us to get the word out there and get the truth out there. And so when you have opportunities to actually contribute to GoFundMe accounts to help people like Ed, who I mean, we've known each other for several years now.
3 years.
And the work that you're doing is amazing. The people that you're getting out and to get the truth that you're getting out there is amazing. And this is an opportunity for people to help. Yes, it's a small opportunity and it doesn't seem like much, but to the people that you're helping, like Ed, it means everything. So even like a $5 contribution, I mean, is still, and it's not just the money, it's actually showing that you support the work and the truth that's getting out there. And so I am a big one to push on, whenever you have a few extra dollars, helping people who are out there who are actually trying to get the truth out there is vital. And so, sorry, I just want to...
No, and what you said about the $5, that is so true, man, because sometimes it can be so discouraging. You just think you're in this... And I know you get the same way, man. I know. I didn't know you were my same age. I thought you were a little younger. But, you get our age, man. You start looking back at your life, and you feel like you're all alone. You feel like, I'm doing this all alone, Where were you? Where were you?
And that's the biggest thing that they do is that they isolate not only survivors, but survivor advocates. Anyone who's trying to get the truth out there, that's what they do, is they isolate you.
Right.
And they make it really hard financially to do anything. And we live, yes, it's great. We have a lot of idealism. You have a lot of idealism. You would really like to make the world a better place. But we live in a world where everything costs money. And so to have a voice of any kind, you have to have some sort of backing. And it is hard to be in this because you get involved and you spend a lot of time wondering why you're doing it because it's a thankless job. And I'm pretty sure, Ed, that you're the same way as I am. A lot of times all you deal with are the people who are trying to stop you. And so it's hard not to look at it when you're involved with all of this and think the only people that are listening are the bad people who are trying to, screw everything up. And so people don't realize you give that $5 and Ed goes on to the GoFundMe and says that someone sees someone that says $5. It's not just the $5. It's just one more person that's showing their support and saying, hey, I care and I appreciate it. And that means sometimes it means everything.
Okay, let's not waste too much time though. It turns into a telethon. Okay, David Shurter turned it to Jerry Lewis right before our eyes, doing a telethon. And I think Labor Day is right around the corner too, or Memorial Day. One of them is always. Labor Day is the one at the end. I used to love the Jerry Lewis telethon too when I was a kid. It fascinated me. I used to watch the whole thing cover to cover. But now, David, speaking of telethons, you seem to you've had contact with everybody. Ted Gunderson, all the people. John DeCamp, you met?
I have.
Okay.
I have.
You've dealt with everyone.
All these people that were involved with Franklin, I've pretty much met every one of them. The only one that I haven't met in person is Paul Bonacci.
Okay.
And Alicia Owen. But I've had lots of conversations with Paul Bonacci and his wife on a website called Franklin Files. And so what I realized pretty early on is that all of the good guys are nothing but bad guys pretending to be good guys in order to control the situation. Ted Gunderson and I were working together. He was always trying to blow smoke up my butt. He was calling me a great American and all of that. And I found out that he was playing two sides against the middle because I was finding out a lot of information. Well, because of what I grew up with in Omaha and what I knew about what was going on in Omaha, because I'm not one of those people who was reading it on the news or anything like that. I was heavily involved with the people who were involved. Alan Baer, all of these people that were involved with Franklin, they were my family's friends. And so I was intimately involved with a lot of it and knew what was going on. And so I knew the real story about Omaha. And what I was finding out, well, with Noreen Gosh.
Did I just lose you?
The mother of abducted boy Johnny Gosh.
Right.
And
well, let me ask you a question before we get to that. Okay, let's stick with.
She was the mother of.
What are you shaving? Are you shaving, David?
Hold on.
Okay, one second.
That's my phone, and I'm afraid to do anything with it because it'll disconnect us.
Okay. Real quick, because the last time I had John, we talked about Ted Gunderson. You were the opinion that you thought you trusted him. What became of that? Might have lost David. But the last time I talked to Dave, he'll be back in a couple of seconds. I'm sure Danny will find him. He probably hit that thing and, how it bumps you off. But the thing is, the last time Dave and I had talked, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to him was about Ted Gunderson, because I have my own suspicions about Ted. I don't know what to make of him either, and I want to talk to everybody about Ted Gunderson to come to a conclusion. In fact, that should be a film that we should do.
Okay.
Oh, you're
Sorry
back.
about that.
So what? Good. Your audio sounds real good right now too. Now the thing is, the last time we talked about Ted Gunderson, at least, that wasn't the last time we talked. But the last time we talked about Ted Gunderson is. You were the opinion that you trusted him and you thought he was a good guy. Now, what changed your mind in that period? Did I lose you again? I think I lost him again. Anyway, like we were saying, it looks like we lost him altogether. And I hope Danny's there. Because I know sometimes he drifts away. He gets bored with my show when he goes off and has a cup of coffee or something. No, David's, we're trying to bring David back is what we're trying to do right now. Okay, so we're bringing David Shurter back on the show.
Don't spread rumors.
Oh, Danny's listening to me this time. Okay. All right. See, we can't talk about Danny. All right. Everybody, keep it to ourselves. Keep it to ourselves here.
No, I'm trying to bring him back up now.
Yeah, no, I can see it bubbling. Yeah. Now, so David and I had discussed Ted Gunderson. In fact, I think our first show we discussed Ted Gunderson. And then I had another show, a special that I did with Doug Millar and David Shurter, where the whole topic of the show was discussions of Ted Gunderson. And as funny as it was, Doug Millar does not like Ted Gunderson. And he had all these funny stories. Oh, no, Doug Millar did like Ted Gunderson. He had all these funny stories about someone else. I don't want to mention his name. All these really hysterical stories. Okay, it was really good. It's in the members section. You got to check that out at OppermanReport.com. It's some really, considering the topic, it's pretty funny stories. So we're trying to get David back on the phone. But now he had told me first that he supported Ted Gunderson. Then he had Doug Millar on with him, and he said again, we did a whole show about their support of Ted Gunderson. In fact, David was telling me that he had some CDs that Ted Gunderson had given him with all kinds of notes and stuff that he never really examined and looked into. And he was going to send me those CDs that we could take a look at and try to figure out what's going on with them. So, and we've never gotten around to doing that because both of us are so busy. David's also helped me out a lot of times, too, booking guests and bringing guests onto our show here that a lot of people may not realize. Fiona Barnett, the woman who was alleged that she was molested by Nicole Kidman's father. I interviewed her through David. In fact, we were supposed to do a three-way interview, and there was so much interference in our Skype and stuff like that, we couldn't keep the show going. Let's see. No, is that a call for me? No. Okay. All right. So let's see what else is going on. Well, next week we have Cynthia McKinney coming on. And kind of a sad note, I was talking to Cynthia, and she didn't know that Cisco Streetlove had passed. I may not be on the air. Am I in the air? Oh, hey, I'm back now. Okay, I'm back on AFR.
Yeah, David knocked you off here. I'm trying to bring him back up.
Okay. Anyway, I was just saying, now I'm getting another request for a call.
Don't answer it. It'll drop you. I'll get it.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, now, it didn't say add to groups. I figured it would have knocked me off. Anyway, so next week we have Cynthia McKinney coming on. And she was not aware that Cisco Streetlove had passed on. So, and when I told her, she was very, very upset. I hate to tell you. I even hate the way I dropped it on her, too. So we've been going back and forth for the past couple of weeks about all this. And she felt that I'm off the air again on AFR. Always a lot of Skype problems with David Shurter.
Sorry.
Oh, no, we're back. Okay, no, but are we on American Freedom Radio, too? Danny, are we on? No, yeah. Okay, David, have you been trying to call back? Is that what you've been doing?
Yes.
Yeah, don't.
Yes.
Just sit there and wait for us to call you, okay? Sit there and wait for us to call you. Okay, Danny, right? I got Danny now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. David kept trying to call you, so I told him not to. And then now you could probably get through to him because he was trying to dial you all that time. But the point I was trying to make was a deal about Cynthia McKinney and Cisco Streetlove. Cisco Streetlove, Dave, are you back? had also investigated all this stuff very thoroughly and was very familiar with these topics. And he's passed on in the past 6 or 7 months. And so has Dave McGowan, and so has Maury Terry. All three of them, that we had kind of brought this little group together to discuss these topics and research these topics in the background, have all died, And when I think the one thing they have in common is me, to tell you the truth, our little connection here. So it is a little, it makes me a little nervous, to be honest with you, especially when I was talking to Cynthia McKinney. She was so convinced that the death of Cisco might have been something nefarious. So, David, are you back? I see you, David. Are you on mute? Could you be on mute, David? Could you be what you're doing to me? Okay, on a Friday at 6:14 when I got 45 minutes to go in this show. I'll talk for 45 minutes. You can't stop me. No one can shut me up. I'll tell you right now. Okay, let's think. Okay, we're going to lose... So, Danny, can you hear me?
Yeah, my Skype's indicating that he needs to update his Skype before he can come back on, so I'm going to let him know.
Okay. All right. Well, how about trying his phone number? How about that? And I'll just keep talking.
I did, but he didn't answer.
Brother. David, come on. You got to pay attention. David, turn on your computer and pay attention. You got to pick up your Skype there. Okay, so we'll pick up David back. And I don't know who this is calling me here. Is that you, Danny, calling me? It says answering this call will put you on hold. So let's see if I'm still on with Danny. Okay, I'm still on with Danny. So David needs to sit tight and call back. And not call back. He needs to sit tight and receive the call. Okay. Well, one of the things I was talking to David about off the air, for the people who picked it up over People's Internet Radio and Public Streaming Radio and Awake Radio, who also simulcast the show, and also Deprogrammed Radio and IPM Nation also play the show here on Friday afternoons that is hosted here on American Freedom Radio. The show last night that we did with Aphrodite Jones is sort of along this topic that we're discussing right now, because we talked about the pedophile allegations against Michael Jackson. And it was a pretty good show that people should check out. We had a big, some fireworks toward the end of the show, where Aphrodite Jones...
You guys hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you, my friend. How are you? How are you, my friend?
Every time I go on someplace, I've had so many people... no idea who will tell me we've never had any problems before, but since you've gotten on, and what happened was my phone somehow shut down.
Well, real quick,
I have no clue what.
But real quick, one of the things Danny was saying, you need to update your Skype. He's getting a message saying you need to update your Skype before you call back. But what we were talking about before all this telephone stuff went on, and I had to sit here and talk to myself for a long time, was Ted Gunderson. Now, your opinion of Ted Gunderson has changed. Explain to me why. David? Please? We lost David again. Oh, my God. All right. We lost David again. And I got 43 minutes to go. Can't keep starting and stopping. You know what I'm saying?
You've got to be kidding me.
No.
I had heard that I needed to update my Skype, so I was doing that, so it updated it, and then it
No. That's for the future. That's for the future. For right now, I'm asking you about Ted Gunderson. What made you change your opinion about Ted Gunderson from the first time I interviewed you to the second show we did with Doug Millar till today?
Ted is kind of complex for me because in some respects, I really liked him.
Right.
He was a really likable guy, but we split apart. We became estranged because I found out that he was playing two sides against the middle. And to his credit, when I confronted him with it, he told me he was an information gatherer, and that was his job, and that's what he did. And I couldn't have him running to other people telling them what I was doing. And because they were causing all kinds of issues for me. So I cut away from him. But Ted Gunderson is involved. Ted Gunderson, John DeCamp, this whole Franklin thing this investigation that went on that was ridiculous. Everything that happened in Franklin, what I realized is that they're all, everything is not what it seems. They were all corrupt in making it all go away. And Ted Gunderson was involved, and Ted Gunderson was, heavily involved with John DeCamp. But
yeah, I
will say that John DeCamp was so-called getting sued by Robert Wadman. And at the time, had Robert Wadman won, it would have hurt the survivor community at the time really bad. And I called Ted and was ranting and raving about how John DeCamp wasn't going to go face Robert Wadman in court. And Ted Gunderson got John DeCamp and drove him to Utah to find out that it was all a joke. It was all a fraud. There was no judge. It was like a judge assistant or something. It got all thrown out of court. And then someone went up to Ted Gunderson and John DeCamp and told them, if I were you, I'd leave right now. And so they left. And so Ted Gunderson is kind of complex for me because in some respects, he was a really good guy. And I really liked some of the stuff he was doing. But in other respects, especially what I was hearing, the stuff that was going on around about him and the people that I knew he was involved with, it was impossible to trust him. And you have to remember that when this all came out in the 80s, what we ended up having was Michael Aquino and Ted Gunderson going all over the media and making themselves out to be this spectacle. Michael Aquino was wearing these wizard outfits that made him look like Merlin. And Ted Gunderson, who was supposed to be this high up FBI dude who was supposed to be brilliant, looked like a bumbling idiot. And as a result of our media, what ended up happening is that this whole satanic thing, which was directly connected to this whole pedophile thing, this pedophile group that was going on, it all became a joke and people dismissed it. And Ted Gunderson, the Ted Gunderson that went on television and acted the way he did, was not the same Ted Gunderson that I talked to on the phone. And so it's a difficult situation. I actually have some right before Ted Gunderson died, and we weren't even talking, he sent me a whole collection of CDs or DVDs, and I'm actually sending them to you, Ed, because I'm not interested in looking into them, but I have a feeling there's something in there that that he wanted me to know about. Because in the end, I think Ted really did care about what he was doing. But he was in a situation. I mean, the people, when you look back at the 80s and everything that was going on, none of them had any choice because they would have been decimated. Everyone was ending up dead. Franklin, they killed the prosecuting attorney that was investigating Franklin. And the story, that story is so blatant because the guy had got flown up. He had a plane, flew up to Chicago with his, I think, an 8-year-old. He was either 8-year-old or 10-year-old son, AJ. They went to go see a baseball game. Before Caradori went into the baseball game, he called his office, said that he had connected with someone, and he had pictures and videos and movies, all the evidence to blow this guy high. On the way back to Omaha from Chicago, his plane, the official story is it disintegrated in air. But witnesses who were around there said it exploded, that there was an explosion. The plane crashed. Now, that wouldn't be so weird and we could just dismiss it, but the plane crashed in none other than Robert Wadman's jurisdiction, who was the chief of police at Omaha, was one of the main people Caradori was investigating, and now was a chief police in Illinois. And Gary Caradori just happened to have his plane crash in the same jurisdiction of one of the very men he was investigating. How is that even statistically possible? and the plane crashed, and all of these pictures, there were people who saw the crash, that saw the pictures, and yet they all disappeared. All of the stuff disappeared. And so this is what was going on in the 80s. You really had no choice. And so Ted Gunderson really had no choice. And he had he had strange relationships anyway with people in his personal life, let alone this professional thing. And John DeCamp is, I mean, he's dying of Alzheimer's now.
Is that true? Do we know that for a fact? Do we know that for a fact he has Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. It's someone that works with him named Doug Millar. Well,
yeah,
Doug
right.
Millar was at my house, and he definitely has Alzheimer's.
Okay. Let me share a couple of things about Ted Gunderson, my experience with Ted Gunderson as well. Okay, a couple of weird things. First of all, when I spoke to Jackie Maguli, the mother of the children, the McMartin preschool, this is when they were living together. It's 97 we're talking about, okay? And I spoke to her on the phone, and she told me, she was a little mad at Ted about this and that and stuff like that. And she says, oh, yeah, he talks to Colonel Michael Aquino on the phone every single day on his cell phone. And I says, what do they talk about? And she goes, well, he just does it to make himself feel important. He talks to Michael Aquino every day. And I found that very strange. And then you look at the Fort Bragg case with who's that kid? The guy, Dr. McDonald, Jeff McDonald. Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, where the Satanic cult came into his house and killed his family, right? Who was stationed there? Michael Aquino. Who handled the witness in that case? Ted Gunderson. Then later on, I got a personal experience with Ted Gunderson. I called him up because I was working with Art Bell and trying to settle the Art Bell lawsuit. And I called up Ted. I said, hey, I just was very successful in helping Art Bell in this thing. You want to settle with him? I'll get you guys together in a room. We can settle this. He goes, no. I'm not worried about that because my insurance is going to take care of it. My errors and omissions insurance. Every private investigator has errors and omissions insurance. If you make a mistake and you screw up somebody's life, you made a mistake in a report, they can't sue you for it. But I realize now that I'm on the radio, my PI insurance doesn't cover what I sing on the radio. It only covers what I do when I'm doing investigations. And he told me his insurance company was handling that lawsuit. So I says, I realize that now. I didn't realize it then. Right before he died, and this is very recently, right before Ted Gunderson died, I had a client on another matter, totally nothing to do with radio or any of this kind of stuff, totally different matter. And she tells me, she goes, I was down at the FBI office, and I ran into that Ted Gunderson. He's such a kind man. Ted Gunderson was still visiting the LA FBI office in 2015. No, not 15, 2010, before he died, right around that time. So
he was a really accomplished sociopath because he could tell you that he was stabbing you in the back, but the way he did it, you actually liked him, and some people appreciated it, and it was bizarre. And Ted Gunderson and John DeCamp worked hand in hand with each other. They were very close. And John DeCamp, you have to understand that John DeCamp was not only a primary investigator in Franklin, he was also one of the primary investigators of the Oklahoma City bombing. And he was also one of the primary investigators of the Columbine shooting.
Wait a second, DeCamp was?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And I know that DeCamp was heavily involved in Columbine because I had 8 huge boxes of all of his files concerning Columbine on my dining room table. Because he ended up giving all of those files to Donna.
Do you still have them?
No, they went to Doug Millar showed up with Donna. She's the mother of Mark. Mark was one of the guys who got shot, who was saying that there were SWAT teams already in place when the shooting started.
Right.
And so, they showed up to get these files.
Wait,
so
do you have people involved in Columbine that I could interview? People you know?
Nobody.
Okay.
While, because the thing about it is that what I've realized is that someone that I trusted, that I've done interviews with and have spent years trying to support, and basically thought he was just associated with bad people because he just wasn't smart enough to see through them, was associated with bad people because he was working with the bad people. And John DeCamp and Ted Gunderson, the thing about it is that with Ted Gunderson, he was a nice guy, but ultimately what he did was horrible. There's so much, he is such a controversial person that, and both good and bad bring up Ted Gunderson because he's so controversial that it ends up becoming all about him instead of the issues that are being discussed.
Oh, that's very interesting you say that, man. That's very interesting you say that. Because every time when I was doing some help on the McDonald case, every time I would bring it up around certain people, the only thing they wanted to talk about was Ted Gunderson's involvement in that case. And none of the questions I was asking could ever get answered. All they wanted to talk about was Ted Gunderson's opinion of that case and how he was wrong about it.
Yeah. The thing about it is that he got involved with all of these high-profile cases, but he was a bumbling idiot. And so he was used to dismiss it. He was, I just wrote an article for Paranoia magazine, and it's all about Lucian Greaves and the deception of this whole satanic movement. And I basically explain what's happened and point out that it's been nothing but a three-ring circus, but that's what it's meant to be. Because they want you to focus on the circus that they're presenting and not look at the issues that it's covering up. And what these guys were covering up, ultimately what they were doing was covering up a multi-billion, if not multi-trillion-dollar child trafficking ring. And that was what was going on in the 80s. That's what's going on now. It never stopped. And I find it interesting that in the 80s, when America went through what we went through and they focused on McMartin, at the very exact same time, the very exact same allegations were coming out in both Australia and the UK in the 80s at the exact same time. Same allegations. And now we have definitive proof that the UK covered theirs up. And we're starting to get proof, thanks to Fiona Barnett, that Australia covered theirs up. And anyone who investigates and looks into Aquino at all can see that that's been totally covered up. And so they want to keep everyone from focusing on that. So they're giving us these circuses. And back in the 80s, the circus was Michael Aquino and Ted Gunderson. And what ends up happening is that they send these people, such as Ted, in who go in under the premise of being advocates and all of these champions of the people. Yeah. But by the time they're done, every case that Ted Gunderson ever got involved with, the same thing happened. Support for the victims dried up, and nobody believed the case. Every single time.
And when you look at something like how this guy could just hop on a plane on his own dime and then drive someone across country without working all that time, with no one funding it, there's no client, and only risk and only downside for you, there's no motivation to do that. No one does that stuff.
No. The thing about it is that Ted was working for the bad side. He was a nice guy. He was. That's the whole thing, is that's the hard part about it, is he was a really nice guy. But he was definitely working for the wrong side.
Have you ever met or talked to Henry Vinson, the author of Confessions of a D.C. Madam?
I haven't, but I did hear some of the interview that you had at the time that you had with him. And the thing about it is that it was almost triggering, because the D.C. Madam case is a smaller version of exactly how it was going on in Omaha, Nebraska. And the fact that she was telling people that she ended up dead because she was murdered.
No, not her. Not the Palfrey case.
Okay.
This is Henry Vinson. He ran the homosexual with the Spence. Yeah. And how about...
and the thing about it is you take that case, But that case is one of a myriad of cases where they were having homosexual prostitution going on.
He met Larry
house.
King, Larry King came to his house.
Yeah. I mean, what's it, Barney Frank?
Yeah.
Same exact situation. It's the same exact type situation. I mean, when you look at the whole Johnny Gosch case, this whole Jeff Gannon case, I in no way believe that Jeff Gannon was Johnny Gosch. But I think that was used as a diversion, because the real question was, how did this dude who had absolutely no credentials whatsoever,
right,
that was running a homosexual prostitution ring out of his house, and he was a prostitute, how did he get in to the George Bush Sr. White House press room and be given the first question generally? Always. Where did he come from and why was he there? And that's the reason why they focused on this whole, he must be Johnny Gosch. Because they didn't want anyone to wonder what the real question was who the frick was this guy and how did he get where he was? You know?
I agree with you. But now, back real quick to the other case, the other D.C. Madam case, Palfrey. Did you get a look at those? Because there's a list of her phone records that came out. I have them. Did you see those?
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't.
The private phone numbers he hasn't released. Okay. He's supposed to come on the show. This guy, I forget his name, Primley, whatever his name is. He's supposed to come on the show. Now he backs up again. But he sent me the stuff. We have it that he released of all the businesses that were on Palfrey's, the DC Madam, the female DC Madam, on her Verizon cell phone records. You know, she's talking to the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. She's talking to huge aerospace companies, military industrial defense contractors. This big business, man, on her phone bill.
And the thing about it is that, and then we see these cases and what they don't want. The reason why they fight you so hard and the reason why they keep you in poverty like they do is because you're able to connect the dots and then explain them in such a way that people understand it. And the thing about it is that what we're seeing now, the difference between what happened back in the 80s and what we have now is that we have 35 years of history. We can actually look back at in the last 35 years since this first came out and to where we are now to see that there was always a problem. And it's all these little cases. And that's the reason why they have us. I don't think we even have the attention span of a goldfish anymore. 5 seconds. You know, people want little news blurbs and that's all they want. And that's all been done on purpose to keep people from connecting the dots. And that's why I find Ed, I kind of am just honored that I'm.
Yeah, you're on the team. Yeah, we're on the team here together. Let me ask you a question. People are asking in the chat room about Linda Weigland, that story with Ted Gunderson, where you remember she was a woman and she lost custody of her kids, and they said their father raped them, and he was running around kidnapping. What do you know about that?
You know, I don't know anything about that specific case, but I do know, and I have had so many dealings with the thing with Ted Gunderson and the allegations that the biggest problem that most people, the majority of people that I've met that have had problems with Ted, was that he was a womanizer and he used women like dirty dish rags, basically. Take their money, got in their pants, basically made their lives miserable, and in the end left them with nothing. And so each individual case that you get into, you have to realize with Ted that there was not just what he was doing for his job, but the man was disastrous in his personal relationships. And so it's hard to decipher what was done intentionally and what was done because, in all honesty, he was a screwed up mess as an individual. And so it's very hard to decipher what came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, you know what, man? In the PI business, a lot of PIs use the same companies for their information. You buy information from the your plate numbers and phone numbers and stuff like that. You buy them from the same people who sell the information. So word gets around about people, and it's very tempting in the PI business. These widows, these lonely women, who have a paranoid problem and they want to give you a retainer, and then they want to come along on a surveillance job. And it's really, really easy to take advantage of these women. And some people have a reputation for doing it, and it gets around really, really fast. People taking advantage of these suckers out there and stroking them. And I got to tell you, Ted had that reputation. He had it even before I met him. He had the reputation. So.
And it wasn't, and the thing about it is that it wasn't just Ted.
Yeah.
It was all people in the system. I mean, one of the main investigators on the FBI, from what I understand, got involved with the woman who was Jacob Wetterling's mother during the investigation.
Yeah.
And so the thing about it is that when you look at this whole thing, it becomes systematic, and you start to wonder if this isn't being systematically done, because what's happening is that they are going in and dealing with, in many cases, women who are very distraught, who are incredibly traumatized, and taking advantage of that trauma and manipulating that trauma. And so it becomes very rough to look at the whole situation, because there's been a lot of effort and a lot of work put into this for a whole long time. And it's because of what I went through as a kid. I know it's ingratiated into everything. It had its hold on everything back in the 80s, let alone now. It's just that the issue is that we have the internet now.
That's true.
In the 80s, we didn't have the internet, and now we have the internet. And they just came out. When Facebook was designed, they designed it so that people would publish personal information about themselves and take pictures about their food, and it was just supposed to be a fun thing. But they are saying now that Facebook has become the place people are getting their news. Nobody is putting anything about themselves, and it's all articles and news and stuff that's getting, out. And so the dynamics of Facebook has completely changed. And it's because people are starting to get out. I mean, look at social media and how important it has been for your work. Without it, you wouldn't have even been able to survive.
Yeah, it's true.
And social media has changed the dynamics of everything. And in many ways, it's starting to wake people up. And that's a perfect example how this whole interview started, this whole campaign. And the fact that, our media, I just read an article yesterday on Yahoo saying that Bernie should give up. And yet the man at one of his latest rallies just brought in 130,000 people. And that was just the people they let there. They were turning people away because they couldn't control them. And so there was more than 130,000 people that showed up. Concerts that people have to, that pay for it to go to, don't get that many people.
David,
we
went down to one of the Hillary rallies over here, okay? And, we got, way down the line, we got in. The room held 900. First it was 600, and then they moved the wall back for 900, but it was only filled up to the point for 600. In comes a bunch of guys, union guys with the belts on and the hard hats and their gloves. And they come in, they're looking around, and they say, "Oh, is Hillary coming here today? Is she coming here today?" And we says, "Yeah." They were bussed in from California to fill the room. They thought they were coming for a job to work on something. And they were brought in to be in the Hillary crowd. I witnessed this with my own eyes, man. So the whole thing.
Well, and what they're saying now is that everyone is focused on Hillary and these emails that she had where, part of them I think is hilarious. She's lesbian and was having a lesbian affair, and now that we all know it for sure. And I think it's funny. But the thing they said is that what is most likely going to bring down Hillary Clinton are not these emails, but the whole Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there too.
Money in Haiti and all of that, because those people I mean, no wonder the Clintons hightailed it out of Haiti, because those people were ready to drag the Clintons out onto the streets and beat them to death.
That's actually the topic we're going to be discussing with Cynthia McKinney next week, is mostly the Clintons in Haiti.
Yeah.
That's the major topic. Let me ask you a question. Now, are you familiar with the story about the White House boys down in Florida?
Yes. Yes.
Because I had them on the show, too. Have you ever talked to those guys in person, the guys from the White House Boys Foundation?
I haven't. The thing about it is that I have a tendency not to reach out to organizations, and I do so on purpose, because I am somewhat of a lightning rod, and I do not get myself involved with organizations because I do not want the things that I do or say to poorly affect anybody and the work that they're doing. And so I have a tendency to kind of just, I keep abreast of what's going on, but, that whole situation is a perfect example of what was going on, what was really going on in America, because I believe that situation is one of a myriad of situations we're just not aware of yet. Because because what we're seeing systematically is that there is a push to quiet these cases down and cover them up all over the place. And so that's what we're seeing in these situations, is that, it's not, if it was just one, it could be dismissed. But when it is prevalent and more common than not, that shows that there's an issue there that needs to be looked at. And it really does. And the White House boys and that whole case down there, that is a huge case. And the fact that it hasn't become more of a frontline topic is telling.
Well, part of the reason why is because that whole town down there made their money from that little boys' town. Everyone was making their living off of what was going on with that school down there,
and that's what we're finding. And that's the reason why people are being quiet, because these places are going in and because that's what we're finding over and over and over. We have indicatives where there's these children's homes. They move into these towns, and then they give the towns millions of dollars. They basically buy these towns off.
Right.
So the towns just look the other way because they're getting so much money and can't exist without that money eventually. And so they're just doing stuff to kids, and everyone's looking the other way because they're feeding these communities so much money.
Also too, these guys told me that they would get weekly medical examinations. They had some kind of really fancy like MRI machines down there. You gotta listen to that show too, man. That's another one. That's right up your alley, The
thing about it is that what I am finding is that this whole MK Ultra thing, is just, I think they destroyed the paperwork. And in many ways, I think that these 20,000 documents that were found for MK Ultra accidentally, I'm not so sure they were found accidentally. I have a feeling that they were done on purpose and discovered on purpose, because what it did was it limited our scope of looking at MK Ultra, and it was everywhere. It was, for a long time, I thought it was just me, and now I look back at it and I laugh at that because it's so ridiculous. Because the reason why they're testing your kids the way they are is because they're being tested for MK Ultra. They're looking for certain characteristics, and those tests are telling them those certain characteristics. And that the reason why, we have this, they're screaming racism about these tests because, they don't have it, but they're not meant to find out what you know. They're meant to find out how you think. And humans actually, there's a finite way of thinking. We all think we're pretty much very similar. We only have a group of choices usually to choose from. And so it'll, all of this testing is actually testing our kids to see how they'll think and what they'll think. And it's all what people have a hard time believing because they want to compartmentalize it. They want to look at this aspect or that aspect or that aspect and compartmentalize it into one aspect. And what ends up happening is that if you take a step back and you look at all these things that we have compartmentalized and made them their own separate issues, what you start to realize is that it's not all separate issues. It's all connected to the very same thing. It's all derivatives. The situation with Franklin and this child abduction thing, and someone once called it an octopus. And so it was, and that it was, all connected to the source. And I tell people it's not an octopus. What it is it's a spider web. It's all connected. It's all the same web. But what ends up happening is you get caught on one strand of that web, and that one strand takes your entire focus. And you're not able to see how it's all connected to the same. And really, when you look at it and you look at the world that we're in, and you realize that this was done on purpose, none of where we are right now did not happen just by accident. This has been systematically being pushed for a long time now. And when you look at the world and you see what the world is like right now, believing that the world was created right now by a bunch of devil worshiping Luciferians, it's not so hard to see. Because right now, look at it. Tell me how a hell on earth could be any worse than what we're living with now, in judged of everything that's going on in the world.
Wait a second. Hey, let me. So I just remembered something. Last night I was talking about this thing that the super loop that they tested here in northern Las Vegas. It's supposed to be like a tube that'll take you from the development. The guy from PayPal's behind it, and the guy from Tesla Motors is behind it. And the plan is to build up like a vacuum tube that goes from Los Angeles up to San Francisco in a half hour, right? And they tested it up here in Nevada the other day. One thing I forgot to talk about last night about that thing is when you look at the test vehicle that they're testing on this sled, they got a bull's head or a cow's head. It might be like a goat's head on there because it has horns, like a live, like a bleached skull, but there's a freaking skull on top of the thing.
Yeah. And the thing about it is that it's also blatant.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing about, and it's been blatant for a long time, because right now people kind of always roll their eyes and look at it as conspiracy theory. But if the Bohemian Grove, where all of our rich people, all of our rich men meet, they worship that Moloch statue, which is nothing more than devil worshiping.
Yeah, but don't you think that's it? That Alex Jones, we can't trust Alex Jones. Don't you think that was also purposely leaked?
Alex Jones, the whole thing about it is that I know what goes on in Bohemian Grove because I was there as a kid.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've experienced what's happened at Bohemian Grove. I will tell you that when they protest this whole cremation of care, even though they are burning an effigy of a child every year there, that is not when they're hurting kids. It's all off season. When I was there, when I was a kid, there was no one there. It was always just a small group of us. And I tell the same stories. My experiences at the Bohemian Grove are exactly the same experiences that Fiona Barnett had at the Bohemian Grove. They hunt children. They're big pedophile parties, and they hunt kids.
We're getting toward the end of the show real quick. What do you make of Mark Klass's daughter was abducted from that same area? What do you make of that story?
The thing about it is that whole area is so ripe with everything that's going on with child abductions and kids disappearing and all ending up, and it's all pretty much centered around that area.
Okay.
And so the whole thing about it is that it's all connected, because this is more than what we even know.
Okay, we're down to a couple of minutes. Why don't you tell people they can find your website and about this event, too, coming up in Seattle?
My website is davidshurter.com. Shurter is SHURT as in Tom, ER. I'm getting ready to revamp it so it's easier because I have a lot of information on there. I have documentaries, a Paranoia magazine article in the pages above. I also have Confessions of an Antichrist, my extended version for free. Conference in Seattle, igdit.org. It's in Seattle, October 7th through the 9th. And Ed's going to be there, so check it out.
I'll be there. David Shurter, thank you so much, my friend. Okay, we got about 4 minutes I got to fill so that this will be a nice 2-hour show that we could put into rotation on all the lovely stations that love to play my shows. I got 5 minutes I got to babble on to you here. So real quick, let me just hit you up here with what the details are on this Seattle event. And David had a great idea. I will be presenting on, who's that guy? Jeffrey Epstein. Because I got a nice little presentation already put together that I've done, on all the shows and stuff like that. Everybody loves it. And what I'll do is I'll put a PowerPoint with that. And there's a whole dump of all new information that I haven't even read yet. You know who's done a lot of work on it? Pierce Redmond from Porkins Policy. So check him out. Go look him up, man. He's doing some great work on that topic right now. And I really appreciate it, that so many people out there are picking up the ball and running with it, man, and doing such excellent work. The interview I did with Pierce Redmond, where he was interviewing me about the topic, was probably the best discussion on the topic of Epstein that I've ever heard, and definitely that I've ever been a part of. I got to say, when I first started doing that show, I looked around for a guest to do a show on the Epstein story, because I remember reading about it before, it came out that he was, before all this stuff came out. So when the first arrest started happening, this whole story about how this billionaire was luring these kids. So let's see here. That's a great topic for this event coming up in Seattle. Let me just find the details on it. Okay, where is it? A little further down the page. We're almost there to it. I got so much stuff I got to do. You have no idea. I haven't eaten all day long. Okay. It is Friday, October 7th, Sunday, from Friday to Sunday in October. The website is igdid.org. And David and myself and Fiona Barnett are going to be on a panel discussing various things. And I'll be presenting at the other one, too. Supposedly, I don't know. But they're getting me over there. So if you guys are in Seattle and you want to come meet me and hang out a little bit, I've been known to tip a few as the evening moves on. Okay, so you can hang out and talk about different stuff and when I'm nice and relaxed and my tongue gets a little looser. Let's see, what else? Okay, now we got 2.5 minutes. I got so much response last night about the ice cream truck lady and the story about the ice cream truck. And I got to tell you, thank you for the responses. Okay, I haven't had a lot of that many positive responses about a show in a long, long time. And it's something personal to me. It's really affected our lives. It's affected Victoria's life. And it's kind of an odd coincidence that her friend Alex, right now where he lives, that he saw the whole thing when he was Victoria's same age when all that was going on. And so it's a story that's very close to us. And I appreciate people not jumping down my throat about it like you jumped down on my throat about so many of the topics I discuss when I'm trying to really do my best to present you with, I do the research. I really do. I'm not just making stuff up here to come on the air like a lot of people do. A lot of crazy people out there, guys. You have no idea. We see these people in action. They're nuts. Behind the scenes. It's sad. So I really do put in the work. I put in the research, and I try and present it to you as honestly as I can. If I'm wrong, I'm willing to take a look and see if I'm wrong. But these same people week after week after week that listen to the show, and then, religiously they listen, and then just can't wait to send me nasty emails and comments and stuff like that. it really does become wearing. And little by little, I'm going to weed you out of the loop. You'll see. Okay. GoFundMe/Opperman Report. That's the focus right now. OppermanReport.com. That's where you can go and subscribe to the member section. EmailRevealer.com if you want to hire me for something, okay? Try and keep all these things separately. You're not contacting me at Opperman Report about your PI work, or you're not contacting me at my business website about the show, because it just makes things more sloppy and more difficult, and it costs me time and keeps things kind of messed up. Guys, next week, Cynthia McKinney. Next Friday night, I don't know. God bless you. I love you all.